What is going on, Sales Dev Squad? Thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of the Sales Dev Squad podcast. Got a super awesome guest for you guys today, my good friend Lee Perine. Funny story about Lee and I, we actually met at a sales training seminar, I guess you could say, at Flip the Script in San Francisco. Lee actually has an extensive background in outside sales, but we just happened to cross paths at like a tech sales training event, which was super awesome. But yeah, in this episode, we're just going to cover a little bit more of how Lee's experience in outside sales has sort of shifted now to partly an inside sales role now that we're selling amidst a pandemic. But super excited to have him on the podcast today. Lee, thanks so much for joining us, man.
Thanks, Mateo. Good to see you again.
Likewise.
Virtually. Yeah.
I know.
I think this is one of those times where we met in real life first and then brought it
Virtual.
virtual. So I'm proud of that.
I know. You're not a stranger over Zoom. You're an actual person that we've actually had contact with.
Yeah. And that they put on a clinic. I think I would call it a clinic. They put on a clinic.
It was super helpful though. But Lee, let's just dive into it, man. I know that we chatted briefly before the call here, but it seems like you've had a number of years of sales experience under your belt doing like outside sales. Could you just talk a little bit more about like how you got into outside sales and like how your journey was when you first started selling in more of like a person to person aspect?
Yeah. So I've always worked like retail jobs through college. And then I took me about 7.5 years to graduate. Not because I failed any courses, I failed a few, but because I flunked a bunch of courses. It was because I just didn't know what I wanted to do. I went from like architecture and mechanical engineering to, eventually business marketing. And so that journey kind of sent me to, all right, I'm getting into business. What do I want to do? And like any 21-year-old, I'm like, what's going to make me the most money? And so that's my introduction to, pharmaceutical sales. So I did that right outside of college, and all outside. It was fun, learned a lot, learned how much I didn't know. Felt like a glorified Starbucks delivery boy for the first 2 years. But learned a lot about like managing a territory, time management, dressing like an adult, I guess, which I'm trying to get away from. Yeah, it was cool. It was a good experience. I think it was a good launching pad into how business worked. So I got a lot from there, but I definitely realized how much, like, for the first couple of years, I was just walking into doctors' offices and spewing, what we did and and talking 90% of the time. Whereas we know that now that should be reversed, right? Or finding out more questions or asking more questions rather than just walking in and telling. So that's what I did. And after my numbers weren't, going up, I kind of forced me to change my ways.
That's an awesome overview, Lee. I guess for our viewers out there that may not know the difference between an outside sales role and let's say an inside sales role, like from your experience, like what defines an outside sales role? What's sort of different? What's similar from your experiences?
There a lot that's similar. It's all the same basic stuff, right? Of like, you need to do your homework before walking in or calling. You need to ask the right questions. You need to identify, like Keenan's book lays it out perfectly. Identify where they're at currently and then where they want to be, and then draw up that gap and sell to that and see if your solution fits into that. So all the basic sales stuff is the same. I think it's all just the extra little things. So just mapping out your territory is a feat in its own. It's something you got to constantly work and manage, because if you're driving an hour, you better make sure that your next demo isn't an hour and a half away from there. So there's a lot more, I think, time management involved and extra kind of curricular deals that you need to do. But at the end of the day, it's all the same. Same when it comes to selling. Although I've always relied on, walking in, telling a joke, shaking their hand face to face, kind of opening up and building that rapport in person. And that's a little bit more difficult to do, that I'm finding to do on the phone, now that I'm locked in my house for the most part. It's a little bit more, I found out how much I relied on that before, that kind of human interaction, face-to-face personality stuff. So I'm trying to figure out how to convey that in a better way now.
Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, obviously outside sales, you're interacting with people face to face. I mean, obviously it's a little tougher now in a pandemic, but like outside of that, like, do you feel like having that physical person to person interaction, face to face interaction, gives you an advantage than maybe perhaps someone just sort of cold calling? Or just from your experiences, like how comfortable do you feel, or easier, quote unquote, do you feel like it makes it to at least, break the ice, so to speak?
Yeah, I mean, looking at, if we're just going off numbers prior to the pandemic, my close rates of over the phone versus in person, I mean, they didn't even compare. In person, I closed way more deals. And I think that was because I'm able to actually see and feel, or first, to answer your question, I think it does give me advantage because I'm able to see their workplace. I'm able to see their flow. I'm able to see where they sit and where the computers are faced, and the customer traffic. And I get to see where they live and what's going on. I get to hear phone calls from other salespeople while I'm there, calling in and bombarding them and interrupting their time. So, and I get to see how they handle that. And so I think being there and understanding their environment has helped me transition to more of like, all right, you're just on the phone, email, and LinkedIn right now. So I think that helped helped out a ton. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then with demos, I think why my close rate was higher in person is with demos, at least with our demo, it's fairly detailed, but I have certain punchlines, certain I don't know, little jokes and quirks that I include in my demo that just, I think, play better in person than they do, over Zoom or over the phone. But again, that's because that's what I was used to. It's I'm learning that, how to transition better into that.
Mm-hmm. I guess, like, how has the transition been for you? I know you kind of alluded it's been a little bit difficult going from, like, obviously talking to people in person to now going more digital. Like, what are some ways that you have kind of just found to be successful as you've sort of shifted to more of like an inside sell?
Yeah, I've read a lot. I've relied on LinkedIn a ton to, I've always followed a lot of inside sales mentors, gurus, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
Similar to, like Kevin Dorsey, Justin Welsh, those dudes.
Mm-hmm.
They I've always followed them and got tips from them, but now I'm able to kind of put it more in context of what I'm doing. So I think that's what I did. I relied more on learning from people who have done solely inside sales and like got in that mindset. So that's one thing I've done. The other thing is I've had to hone in on getting that value up front and getting them to open up quicker, because in person, I can walk in and whatever, I'll bring a treat, or I'll have like something funny to say, some intro, something to like get them to stop, and then we can talk. It's a lot harder to to walk away in person than it is to hang up the phone or say no thanks. So that's been the other part that I've been learning is how do I get them on the phone and be able to start opening up that dialogue a lot quicker. And so that's been a learning experience as well. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's been fun.
It's almost like you're stepping into like a mini SDR role of its
Oh,
own.
totally. Yeah. Yeah. That's why, like, you know, a lot of respect for that, because it's like, it's a lot tougher than I originally thought. You know what I mean? Just being outside sales the whole time. So.
For sure. I'm curious, man, like like outside sales, you kind of alluded to this, like having time management especially is really important. Like, you know, there's only so much area you can cover in a single day. If we compare it to like an inside sales role where I could call, you know, as many people as I would like and maybe perhaps touch a little bit more or get a little bit more territory. Like how do you manage your time effectively to where, you know, you can still get stuff done, but the fact that you actually have to physically travel to these locations and sort of still be at optimal efficiency? Or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Well, I like my perfect like sweet spot, I guess, is at least 3 days out on the road. And then typically Monday and or Friday, I'll spend making follow-up calls, sending those emails out, doing whatever admin stuff I have, but hitting the phones on those days. And then, but yeah, out on the road at least 3 days is what I found gave me the most output to you know, build that pipeline.
Mm-hmm. Now, are you like hitting up the same prospects, or are you reaching out to new prospects during those travel days, or what does your schedule look like on those like traveling days?
Yeah, it's usually 10. I like to hit 10 new, right? And then 5 previous if I can. 15's a lot. You know, in LA and Orange County area, it's all pretty packed in. So you can get to a lot of places fairly quickly or easily, you know, minus the traffic, of course. But as far as it's not as spread out, right? Like I don't need to drive 2 hours to just get to another dealership. I can get to them pretty quickly. So yeah, I think 10 and 5 is the number that I've seen works.
Yeah, that's interesting. I guess like is the sales cycle any different for like an outside sales compared to maybe like an inside sales, or relatively the same, or what's your experience on that?
I guess it varies on the product, but in the company, but for, you know, the sales cycle now is pretty much the same as it was, you know, now that I'm for the most part solely inside. I mean, it's the same. There's no difference. Yeah. Yeah. Although I do have to say, when all else fails, show up. That's kind of like my thought of, you know, if you're following up on a demo or a conversation and you get ghosted or whatnot, 9 out of 10 times when I just show up, they're going, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I meant to get back to you. I apologize." Da, 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 da. I'm like, so showing up in person helps a whole lot. You know, that's one thing that I'm kind of missing right now that I'm learning to adapt to.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like more SaaS companies should basically, if it makes sense on their industry, include more of like an outside sales step as a part of their cadence? Like, do you feel like more inside sales should consider taking some outside sales approach, or like, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I don't know the numbers. I don't know, you know, I don't know how that looks. And I'm just biased because that's been my whole life. But again, I just have to think about how I've closed more deals or brought in more revenue to the companies I've worked with. And most of the sales happen in person and showing up. So I don't know how to answer that other than, yeah, if it makes sense for that company to get some. I think it depends on the product and the industry, but for our company, it makes sense,
Mm-hmm.
definitely.
And so I guess I know you have some experience like working in like B2G, like solid government and like automotive. How are things going for you over at AVRS? What do you guys kind of specialize in?
So we're an electronic vehicle registration provider. So it's not the sexiest industry, but it is definitely needed. So everybody needs to register their cars, and we work directly with the state government to streamline the DMV process essentially, and through our platform. So it's been um, it's been great. I mean, I've been doing this for the last like 9 years or so, and the partnership, the private to public partnership is depending on the area. I mean, it's a great partnership. Both get a lot out of it. Both parties do,
Mhm.
and working with the DMV has been awesome. They've been open to new technologies. They want to get better. They want to help
Nice.
the customers out, and so that helps us do our job a little bit better too, and innovate as quickly as we can. So yeah, it's been great.
I guess have you noticed a difference between selling like B2G to maybe like B2B and like your pharmaceutical sales experience?
Um, not not really. No, I mean it's all pretty much the same. Um, I can say like in pharma, I don't think it fit my personality as much. It was a lot more buttoned up than, I don't know. I was just a little bit more looser personality, which tends to work better in the auto industry.
Yeah.
So I feel much more comfortable here than there. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Appreciate that, Lee. And I know that you kind of want to touch upon a little bit more about like, how we can close deals faster and, sort of build more urgency with our prospects. Was hoping you could just share a little bit more about, just some of your experiences on how you've been able to just kind of push deals further down the pipe to sign deal.
Yeah. I mean, I guess close deal faster is a little clickbaity, right? Because the old, what you should be doing, and what we all strive to do on every call, is do the research, understand their business, understand like Keenan says. I've read that book like 3 times. So good. Um, Understand their current state, understand where they want to be in the future state, and build out that gap as much as possible. And if your solution can help you get them to that point, then you're doing business. There is no like close at that point. It's just a progression of conversations after that to work out details. So that's the ultimate. That's what I strive for in every call. But in reality, it doesn't always work out that way. You may have a great call and do all those right things, um, and then they ghost you, or you have a time to call them back and or email or whatever, have another meeting, they don't show up. So that's the reality. That happens to everybody all the time. And so there's some things that I'd put into place to help collapse those time frames and stop from the chase occurring, meaning
Mm.
stop you from like constantly following up with no callback. Nobody wants to be a part of the chase. Sorry, my dog's barking.
No worries.
um, but so the first thing is, say you've done all the right things, you've had a meeting, you had a demo. The first thing is very basic. It's kind of the fundamentals, but it's book a meeting from a meeting. Like if you don't get signed paperwork on that meeting, and there's due diligence that need to happen, or there's homework on either side that needs to happen, you need to make sure that you get a time and date for that next meeting, not just next week, not just next month, because that leaves it wide open, and it gives them essentially an out, as well as mentally it doesn't lock them down to a time. So after we end a meeting, I'll make sure I pull out my calendar, either in person or my phone, either in person or, over Zoom or over the phone, and say, okay, I'm pulling out my calendar. What day next week works best for you, earlier in the week or later in the week? And I give them those options, let's do later in the week. Okay, great. I got Wednesday or Thursday. Which day works best for you? Let's do Wednesday. Okay. Morning or afternoon? Let's do morning. And it sounds like a lot, but it's giving them the power to schedule it on their time. And instead of saying, all right, how does next Tuesday work for you? And it's like, so that's been something that's worked really well for me. And then once they get down to a date and time, like, all right, next Wednesday at 12:15 p.m., I'll shoot them a calendar invite. And then if they don't pick up at Wednesday at 12:15 p.m., I'll leave them a voicemail and say something along the lines of, hey, I'm just honoring our time that we put together. I'll be available for the next 30 minutes. If you're around, give me a call back. If not, let's talk after 2 p.m. or whatever time I have open after that day. Mm-hmm. And at that point, if they still don't call back, I don't start calling 3 or 4 more times or emailing them 3 or 4 more times, because that is where I think they can smell your desperation. I think that's where the chase starts. And I think that's where they realize that, oh, does this guy need me more than I need him? Like, does he not have anything else going on other than me? So I usually just leave that one voicemail. And then, like I say, keep the line taut. I don't want them to get too far away. So typically over the next 2 to 3 days is when I'll follow up. And if they still don't pick up, then what I'll do is either one or two things. I'll either follow up one more time, or if the deal is big enough, or if it feels right, I'll bring in, my director or VP or something like that to follow up with them for me. Or I'll do a breakup email and just say, hey, looks like the timing's not right. I get it. We got other things going on as well. Appreciate your time. We're here if you need me. And I'll do like a subtle breakup email like that. And that typically gets them to respond most of the time. So, there's other things involved there, but I think it's keeping the posture and having the patience and not calling them a million times or emailing them a million times, because that's when you kind of lose that posture, And if you've done your job up front of providing that value and understanding the needs and blah, 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 then you shouldn't be chasing after them at that point, because the deal wouldn't have happened anyway. So,
I see.
Those are just a couple things.
Thanks, Lee. I love your the word that you chose, posture. Is that more of just sort of the energy that you continue to bring, like on that specific deal, on that pipeline? Or I guess, how would you further explain posture in your opinion?
Well, it's being confident in what you have to offer, being willing to walk away from the deal. And again, if you did your job up front of identifying that gap and really truly feeling that your solution will get them to a better state, then just be confident in that and know that you got the goods, that you got the gold, and not, there's a lot that has to go to it, even showing up late if you show up to a meeting and then the decision maker doesn't show up and they put someone else in their place, like, that's your choice. Should I keep my posture of like, no, hey, this is important. This is too important. We've got to have all parties involved. Let's just go ahead and reschedule. Like, that to me is better posture than going, okay, then I'll walk through it with you. And then they try to translate it to their boss, and it's like, and then you're trying to get another meeting and it doesn't work. So I think just kind of maintaining that mentality of if you truly feel it, then they need you more than you need them, and stick to it, and don't don't show desperation, and don't start chasing after them. Just let them go, if you need to.
It's a really good way to put it, Lee. Thanks so much for that overview, man.
Yeah.
Always like to finish off the pod here with sort of a question, but we can kind of tailor it here. I guess for any outside sales reps struggling to adapt with the current times, kind of in the same situation as you, or just someone looking, just struggling to adapt to the current times, I guess what advice do you have for them?
Be open to learning. Like I'm part of Kevin Dorsey's Patreon group. It's $10 a month. It's awesome. I get a ton of value out of it. He's a pretty tactical dude when it comes to inside sales. So I figure, hey, if this is going to be my life for the next month or two or whatever, however long, I want to learn from people that I know are doing it and doing it well. And so I say just reach out to those people, follow them, pick up some books, uh, you know, dive in. And I think I saw a post from Jason Lemkin saying, you know, Q3 was your time to adapt. Um, Q4, or was it something like that? Q2 is the time to adapt. Q3, there's no excuses now. Kind of like you gotta figure it out and start going with it. You can't just like think that it's gonna go back to outside what you were used to with outside sales. It's take a quick, sharp right and dive in and start learning.
That's super helpful, Lee. Thank you so much, man. I guess for anyone out there, any of our viewers here, just really took a lot out of this here and just wants to pick your brain or wants to reach you directly, what's the best place to reach you?
It's on LinkedIn. Yep. Lee Perine. I don't even know my hold on, let me find it.
Okay. Yeah,
Just
Lee,
search Lee Perine.
Lee
Look for a short, hairy guy. That'll be me.
There you go, Lee. Well, Lee, thanks so much for hopping on the pod today, man. We really appreciate it, and definitely a lot of value here for any of our outside sales reps in the SDS community, man. But thanks so much, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Awesome, Mateo. Talk to you soon.